In a quiet college town in North Carolina, a respected professor was leading what appeared to be a perfect life, admired by students, trusted by faculty, and adored by his wife of 15 years. But under that calm exterior hid a dangerous secret. One student, one affair, one pregnancy, and one horrifying night that ended in a violent death. This is a story of how a brilliant academic with everything to lose risked it all for a lie, and how the truth came crashing down in the most unthinkable way. To his students at Fairmount University, Dr. Thompson Caldwell, 44, was the gold standard. Charismatic, sharp, and well-spoken, he taught American literature like it was performance art. He'd been at the university for almost 12 years, with tenure, a solid research grant, and glowing reviews every semester. He drove a silver Tesla, lived in an upscale gated community, and was often seen holding hands with his wife, Deborah Caldwell, at university events. But none of them knew that for the last 6 months, Dr. Caldwell had been carrying on an affair with a 22-year-old senior named Rachel Monroe. Rachel wasn't just any student. She was ambitious, top of her class, and she'd been assigned to assist him on a research paper for his upcoming book. What started as extended office hours turned into weekend emails, then late-night texts, and eventually hotel keycards. At first, Thompson told himself it was harmless, a fling, temporary. But what he didn't count on was that Rachel would fall in love, and worse, that she would get pregnant. The moment she told him, everything changed. He stopped replying to her texts, avoided her on campus. He told her to take care of it, claiming this wasn't part of the deal. But Rachel was never going to go away quietly. She threatened to expose everything, the affair, the pregnancy, even the screenshots of their messages, if he didn't take responsibility. What Thompson didn't know was that Rachel had already started documenting everything. Emails, audio recordings, even photos of the two of them together at his favorite off-campus hotel. She had started building her own case. At the same time, Deborah, Thompson's wife, was also beginning to suspect something was off. He was coming home later, showering the moment he walked in, suddenly locking his phone, turning down intimacy. And one day, she found something. A receipt from a pharmacy on the other side of town. 4 prenatal vitamins. In a name she didn't recognize. But the billing address? Her own. Deborah Caldwell wasn't the type to jump to conclusions. She had built a life with Thompson, a quiet, structured life built on routine, comfort, and years of shared ambition. They'd met in graduate school, built their careers side by side. She supported his tenure path, managed the household, and kept things steady when his father passed 3 years ago. But lately, something in Thompson's behavior didn't align with the man she married. He'd started working late, but without grading papers. He claimed stress, but was never short-tempered. The disconnect was subtle until she saw the receipt. It was crumpled in the bottom of his blazer pocket, a prescription for prenatal vitamins in the name of R. Monroe, billed to their home address. She didn't recognize the name, but it didn't take her long to figure out who Rachel was. Deborah may not have worked at the university, but she knew how to search. Within hours, she was staring at Rachel Monroe's public Instagram account. Selfies in the English department hallway, tagged photos at conferences, smiling next to her husband at a book panel 6 months prior. Deborah's stomach turned. She spent the next 3 days in silence, watching Thompson like a hawk. She didn't confront him. Not yet. Instead, she copied a receipt, began logging his late arrivals, and dug deeper. What she found next crushed her. Through a colleague at the university library, Deborah quietly accessed Thompson's office calendar. Weekly research meetings with Rachel. Email threads back and forth, formal on the surface, but a few messages were carelessly personal. A joke about hotel coffee. A reference to a necklace she'd seen in a bookstore. The deception was deep, but the betrayal wasn't just emotional. It was calculated. Deborah began tracking his movements using a shared iCloud location that they had both forgotten was still active. One Thursday night, while Thompson claimed to be attending a faculty networking dinner, Deborah followed the dot on her screen. It led her to the Maplewood Inn, a discreet business hotel just outside city limits. She parked in the lot and waited. 40 minutes later, she saw him walk out, not alone. Rachel was with him, her hand on his arm, laughing. Deborah didn't make a scene. She took photos, dated them, sent them to her private email. Then she went home. But something inside her snapped that night. This wasn't just infidelity. This was a man gambling with her life, their marriage, their reputation, their safety. And then came the final blow. 2 days later, Rachel emailed Deborah directly. "You deserve to know what is done. I didn't expect to end up here, but I'm not going away, and I won't be silenced." Attached was a positive pregnancy test, a sonogram image, and a recording. In the audio, Thompson's voice was unmistakable. "You'll ruin everything. Just disappear. Get rid of it. No one has to know." Deborah sat frozen, her hand shaking, not with grief, with rage. Deborah knew the evidence in her hands could end everything. Her marriage, his career, their reputation. But she also knew something else. If she didn't move carefully, someone could end up seriously hurt. And deep down, she had a growing fear that Rachel Monroe was not as naive as she seemed. Because Rachel wasn't backing down. The young woman had gone from emotional to assertive in her tone. The emails turned colder, the demands sharper. She wasn't just threatening exposure. She was laying out consequences. "If he won't claim this child, I will go public. To the university. To the press. I've already spoken to a legal team." Deborah read those words again and again. The legal angle wasn't what scared her. It was the fact that Rachel knew how to play the long game. Deborah didn't respond right away. She went to an attorney. Quietly. Privately. She didn't file for divorce. Not yet. But she began preparing her side of the story, documenting everything. Meanwhile, Thompson was unraveling. He didn't know that Deborah had discovered the affair. He thought he was managing 2 lives, barely, but still in control. His emails to Rachel became increasingly aggressive. He told her to stop contacting him. He blamed her for blowing things out of proportion. He even suggested that the pregnancy might not be his. That message was a turning point. Rachel stopped talking. No emails, no texts, no threats, just silence. And that's what worried Deborah the most. Because silence wasn't surrender. It was strategy. Then, one evening, Rachel showed up at their front door. It was a Sunday. The house was quiet. Deborah was upstairs folding laundry when the doorbell rang. Thompson answered. Seconds later, Deborah heard Ray's voices. She came downstairs to see Rachel standing in their entryway, visibly pregnant. Her hand was shaking as she held a folded envelope. "You don't get to ignore me," Rachel said, her voice cracking. "This is your child. I'm done waiting." She tossed the envelope at Thompson's feet. Inside were printed messages, photos, and a paternity test appointment form, one she had already scheduled. Thompson didn't say a word. His face was blank. But Deborah saw something in his eyes. Not fear, not guilt, calculation. After Rachel stormed off, Deborah demanded answers. Thompson denied everything, even with the evidence sitting in front of them. He accused Rachel of manipulation, of trying to ruin his life. But Deborah wasn't buying it anymore. She told him she was done protecting him, that she had enough to destroy him legally and publicly. Thompson didn't flinch. Instead, he calmly poured a glass of wine, sat on the couch, and whispered something Deborah would never forget. "If she tries to take this further, I will make sure she regrets it." The next morning, Rachel Monroe was reported missing. Rachel Monroe's last known location was the parking lot of her off-campus apartment complex. She had texted her roommate around 8:12 p.m. on a Monday night. "I'm stepping out for a bit. Don't wait up." After that, she vanished. Her phone stopped pinging around 8:37 p.m. near a rural stretch of Route 27. The location was strange, a wooded area with no residences nearby and no reason for her to be there. When Rachel didn't return by the next morning, her roommate called campus security. By noon, the local police were involved. At first, there wasn't much urgency. College students go off the grid. Maybe she needed space. But then her car was found, parked crookedly on the side of the highway. The driver's side door was ajar. Her phone and handbag were still inside. Something was clearly wrong. Detectives began digging. It didn't take long for Rachel's name to trigger concern. A faculty member, a pregnancy, a rumored affair, all unofficial, all whispered. But now it was serious. Officers questioned Thompson at the university. His answers were clinical. Yes, I know Rachel. She's a research assistant. No, we're not involved in any personal way. I haven't spoken to her in weeks. It was a lie, and he knew it. Deborah watched the news unfold with a sickening mix of dread and recognition. The local coverage described Rachel's case as concerning but unclear. But Deborah knew the truth, or at least part of it, and she was beginning to fear the worst. She met privately with one of the lead investigators, Detective Hannah Reyes, and revealed everything. The affair, the pregnancy, the emails, even the audio recording Rachel had sent. It changed the course of the investigation overnight. A search warrant was granted for Thompson's office, devices, and vehicle. His university email was combed for hidden threads. Surveillance footage was pulled from campus entrances, city intersections, and nearby gas stations. Then came the break. Footage from a gas station security camera, 8:26 p.m., showed Rachel getting into a dark blue SUV. A faculty sticker was visible on the windshield. The car was registered to Thompson Caldwell. He claimed he had loaned it to a colleague that evening, a claim easily disproved. When confronted, Thompson stuck to his denial, his tone cold, unshaken. If you're accusing me of something, bring me proof. But proof was closing in. Tire tracks near Rachel's abandoned car matched the tread pattern of Thompson's SUV. Inside the trunk, investigators found fibers consistent with the lining of Rachel's jacket. A small smear of blood was recovered from the rear latch, too little to confirm identity, but enough to raise alarm. Deborah, now fully cooperating with law enforcement, turned over one more critical piece of evidence. Rachel's final email to her. He's trying to silence me. If something happens, please don't let him get away with it. Rachel was missing. The evidence pointed to foul play, but there was no body, and without a body, no one could prove what really happened. Yet, while investigators searched for Rachel Monroe, Thompson Caldwell returned to work as if nothing had happened. He taught his classes, held office hours, smiled in faculty meetings. But behind closed doors, detectives were pulling apart the life he'd spent years curating. They began combing through Rachel's digital footprint, cross-referencing her private messages, email drafts, voice memos, and photos. Each clue painted a darker picture of manipulation and control. The deeper they went, the more troubling the timeline became. Rachel hadn't just been silenced. She'd been groomed. In her text archives, investigators discovered emotional voice notes, Thompson speaking softly about not ruining his future, begging for secrecy, offering to pay for alternative without ever directly acknowledging the pregnancy. Then, something new surfaced. Rachel wasn't the first. A former graduate assistant, Emily Vargas, had transferred out of state 2 years earlier under mysterious circumstances. After learning about the case on the news, she came forward anonymously through her attorney. Her story echoed Rachel's: flattery, private invitations, a brief affair, followed by threats and emotional withdrawal when she refused to continue. She was warned, in Thompson's words, to move on quietly. The university had no formal complaints on record, but now they had 2 women describing the same tactics. The pressure around Thompson tightened. The district attorney was briefed. A grand jury was quietly formed. But there was still one missing link, a chargeable offense. A body, a confession, something that would make it impossible for him to walk free. Deborah watched it unfold like a slow-motion collapse. At home, her husband said almost nothing. He moved mechanically through their shared space, keeping his phone close, his voice low. She began sleeping in the guest room. Deborah kept her involvement with police ongoing, secretly forwarding files she found buried in old drives and backups, including an encrypted folder Thompson had forgotten about. Inside were backup logs from an old phone, GPS routes, deleted photos, voice memos. One of those photos would shift the entire investigation. A time-stamped image from Thompson's SUV camera, meant for parking assistance, showed Rachel sitting in the passenger seat the night she disappeared. She wasn't smiling. She wasn't speaking. Her hands were folded in her lap, and behind her, in the reflection of the window, was a shovel. Detectives acted quickly. Search teams returned to Route 27 with ground-penetrating radar. 2 days later, just 700 yards from where Rachel's car was found, they discovered disturbed soil under a thick layer of brush. Buried beneath the earth was a shallow grave. The remains were badly decomposed, but dental records and jewelry confirmed the worst. Rachel Monroe was dead. The official cause of death would take weeks to determine. But now, Thompson Caldwell could no longer deny what had happened. He was arrested at his home on a Thursday morning. Calm, clean-shaven, dressed for class. As officers led him away, Deborah stood at the kitchen window, watching him disappear without a word. The courtroom was packed. Students, faculty, local reporters, even former colleagues from a university filled the gallery as Thompson Caldwell stood trial for the murder of Rachel Monroe. The prosecution called it premeditated, not a moment of rage, not an accident, but the calculated silencing of a woman who had become inconvenient. The evidence was damning. GPS data placing him at the burial site, surveillance footage showing Rachel entering his car, audio recordings of coercion, and the digital paper trail of threats, bribes, and manipulation. Still, Thompson pleaded not guilty. His defense attorney tried painting Rachel as unstable, claimed she was obsessed, that her death was unrelated to their final encounter. But the jury wasn't swayed. The prosecutor's closing argument hit a nerve. Rachel Monroe didn't die because she was reckless. She died because she trusted a man in power to treat her like a person, not a problem. It took just 4 hours for the jury to return a verdict. Guilty, second-degree murder, tampering with evidence, obstruction of justice. At sentencing, Deborah took the stand, not to defend Thompson, but to confront him. Her words cut through the silence. You didn't just lie to your students. You didn't just destroy our marriage. You ended someone's life to protect a version of yourself that was never real. And for that, I hope you never feel peace again. Thompson showed no emotion, just a blank stare. He was sentenced to 35 years in prison without the possibility of parole. Fairmount University issued a formal apology to the Monroe family and announced a sweeping policy change regarding faculty-student relationships. An ethics board was created, and counseling services were expanded. Rachel's parents didn't speak to the media. They moved quietly out of state, choosing privacy over headlines. But her story left a mark. A scholarship was established in her name for women pursuing degrees in journalism, a nod to the way she documented her own story, piece by piece. Deborah, now divorced, sold her home and moved to Asheville. She started volunteering with a legal advocacy group for victims of abuse and coercion, working behind the scenes to help others recognize the signs she once missed. The scandal faded from the front page, but for those who lived it, nothing would ever be the same. Rachel Monroe was not just a victim of passion or bad judgment. She was a casualty of a man who weaponized trust, and the silence of those around him who didn't speak up in time. Thank you for watching, and if you find this story interesting, kindly subscribe, like, and share for more crime stories like this.